Hello there. Now, I don't want to prefigure too much in my reading of how to restore a castle, but one of the major elements of the project is the role of community at Dunans. Mostly, before coming to Scotland, I think I conceived of community as being location based, a community being of one fixed in a location and generated by proximity. The ebb and flow of members being functions of how long people stayed and how long people lived. But of course, this isn't the only type of community that humans have created. There are those associated with the workplace and with organisations, with politics and in academia. As I began to understand how communities develop on and offline, I started to think about how community as a force for change and for progress might help Dunans. This was helped because in 2008 I became chair of the Collintrive and Glendale Development Trust, an organisation set up specifically to manage change in our community, both in terms of exploiting opportunities which would make the community a more vibrant, sustainable place to live and work, and also when external actors decided that they wished to cite significant developments within our environment. Think, for example, of new woodlands, commercial woodlands, or new wind farms, that sort of stuff. So the Development Trust depended on a traditional type of community defined by location. However, there was a different community which became apparent as my voluntary service to the organisation continued. You see, by becoming a spokesperson for our community in a third sector space in Scotland, I met a lot of folks just like me from all over the country, concerned just like me about rural depopulation, the lack of jobs, the lack of housing, the dispersal of the young to the major cities, the rise of second homes and holiday homes, as well as a lack of basic services like buses, broadband and timely bin collections, all that kind of stuff. And I travelled all over the country attending seminars, making speeches and becoming involved in a collective community endeavour for the country that had an ever-evolving roster of people who were interested, people who were members of this community, who became, for me, part of an empowering, supportive and engaged community of interest, which I was part of. It was wonderful. It was inspiring and it gave me a real sense of belonging. And by the time I'd realised that I'd entered into this community, I'd been working with I'd been working with the trust for about 3 or 4 years, and Scottish Laird had begun to gain traction, and the timing is quite interesting because Scottish Laird really kicked off after in February of 2009 we had the good fortune to be in national papers because we had views of the tallest tree in the UK. So this was a tree planted by Angus Fletcher in 1849 among several others. It was a Douglas fir and it had been imported from America as part of a consignment organised by the Younger family, who were creating an arboretum at Benmore House, which is just over the hill from us and is now one of Scotland's Royal Botanic Gardens. So the tree had come to notice of some folks at Sparsholt College in Hampshire. Now, these guys are all training or are arborealists, and they're very interested in the type of woodland that the UK has. And in particular, they were at that stage working up a project around big trees, exotic trees, and this was a way of dealing with that. So they came to Scotland having identified maybe 10 trees they wished to measure, and one of the first that they measured was our own. Now, oftentimes they would triangulate some lasers to hit the top of the tree and take a measurement there. But in Scotland, that's sometimes quite difficult because of the density of planting. It's also often difficult to get a fix because the tip of a tree will move around. So in our case, in the case of the Dunans Douglas fir, they decided to climb it. So they spent 3 hours getting to the top of the tree, these three guys, and at the very top, the tree bifurcates, and the lead climber stopped at the bifurcation and used an aluminium pole to accurately get to the top of the tree. Now, they cross-referenced that by, because there's a second Douglas fir standing beside the tallest one, a photographer climbed the second tree and took a photo across the gap. What amazed me about it, actually, was that the photographer climbed the second tree in about half an hour. You know, the arborists had taken their time, had been very methodical, were concerned about making sure that they did all the rope work in proper fashion for arborists, whereas the other guy, who'd been taking photos of climbers all over the world, was used to just scampering up. So scamper up he did, took this photo. And that photo was the one that confirmed the height of the tree at something, I think it was 63.5 meters or 210 feet. Now, in America, you'll be saying, oh, that's a puny tree. But for us, for the UK, it's a biggie. And the guys from the college left and said they'd be in touch soon thereafter, once they'd measured some other trees that they had earmarked for the process. They came back next week to say, yeah, we'd won. We'd got the tallest tree in the UK. And that then was promoted through press releases to newspapers like the Daily Mail, the Telegraph, the Times, the Guardian. It was on all of them, all of the UK papers. They were so impressed with it. And the photo was spectacular because not only did you have a gentleman standing in the very top of the tree with his aluminium pole, but behind it, the whole of the glen laid out to see. So this lovely U-shape and the Imbi fields and the river, and it was beautiful, and the hills and views over into Loch Fyne. It was a quite incredible photo. And so that's by way of saying this was our big break, because as a big break, it was instrumental in bringing Groupon and Gift Republic to Scottish Laird. They'd been using a third-party lairdship provider, and they were unhappy with that relationship. So what we offered that the other guys couldn't was a project that the Lairds and Ladies, once they'd bought their title, could get involved in. There was a tour that folks could go on, and they could actually go and stand on their square feet. And these three things combined to make both Groupon and Gift Republic understand that we were the most, how shall I put this, not successful, but the most credible of the lairdship projects. You know, we are doing something very positive here. And that then gave us access to a worldwide market, which brought, in the end, or so far, around 400,000 lairds and ladies to Dunans. So that was a huge number of people. Now, lots of people were in contact with us. And because of my work at the Trust, I was beginning to see that this kind of community of interest, the one that the third sector enjoyed, would map quite nicely onto Dunans and the restoration project. This was not only a way to say the decorative titles we were selling had a purpose, it was also to say become involved. You know, with the tours, folks were arriving who wanted to help, who felt the same connection with the heritage and history and Scotland that I and Sadie did, that our title packages were delivering an altogether wider benefit to recipients than simply a lovely surprise gift to the man or woman who has everything. Like any really good present, the titles were offering a longer relevance to our lairds and ladies' lives, in that we were getting lots of people visiting and participating on tours. Our customers were becoming more than acquaintances. They were becoming volunteers and friends. They were becoming a new family for Dunans, if you like. And of course, that's also where the idea of the Dunans Rising Tartan came in, because family equals clan, and clans have their own tartans. And also, lots of folks who identify with Scotland may not have an extant connection to a clan, and having a tartan is a wonderful thing, particularly when you go to Cayley's, wearing your own clan tartan. And so that whole sequence of events with the tree measuring, the publicity, the bringing in of Gift Republic and Groupon was where the project really started to achieve liftoff, because we were taking people on tours, talking about the project. We were showing people their plots, taking photos for them as they point at their piece of Scotland. And it was also that whole thing of describing the way Dunans has been, or is set in, the broad sweep of Scottish history is associated with it. And it's also that thing of inspiring folks to come and work on the bridge and help with the curtain wall and create that sense of everybody contributing. It's been really wonderful. So you might say, so that's all wonderful. That's great. That's really very admirable. But actually, what's the point? Well, the point is that this community, the Dunans community, is invested in the project, and once the castle is restored, will want to come and stay in the castle. And the money they then pay to stay will, well, in the first instance, help progress the rest of the restoration, and second, maintain the building in perpetuity. And here, let's just recap that the idea is that we will be restoring the castle incrementally. There's a bit between the house and the castle and the tower. Those two will be the first elements of the project. And then, with the income that we earn from those accommodations, we will then move on to other compartments in the castle, because the castle divides up into 6 or 7 fairly tidy segments. So we get to the point where the castle restores itself. Now, that's all good, but it depends upon myself and Sadie's continuing to lead the project. And I'm often asked on tours or at the end of tours, what will happen when I retire? What will happen to this community that has helped with the restoration of the project? Because surely if you people say retire, then what happens to the castle? Well, will our kids take over, for example? Will we sell on? In both cases, the answer is no. And the reason for that is because I see the community as a critical, crucial part of the restoration, but also of the longevity of this heritage project, because a heritage project doesn't finish with the restoration. So the idea will be that the castle will be put into a trust, which will have the sole aim of maintaining the building and improving facilities over time, and to do so by accommodating the community which has supported it since 2010. And there it is, really. That is the reason for this community of interest. It is by that simple calculation regarding the future of the castle, that we have manifested a group of people really interested in its future. Often these buildings are related to the fortunes of a family, or rather the head of a family. Historically a Victorian industrialist or the landed aristocracy. Perhaps latterly it's been millennial tech bros or a Gen X hedge fund manager who have taken castles on and restored them for private purposes. With Dunans, this is not going to be the case. For Dunans, we tie the building to its community irrevocably, with the titles obviously, but also with the sponsored trees, by creating memorials, and also a Lairds and Ladies room where we'll exhibit the progress of the restoration and all the names of our supporters. But the trust will encapsulate it. And actually, thinking about that Lairds and Ladies room, we can go further. We can say there'll be a permanent visual exhibition, and obviously all sorts of tartan items to buy. We still will do that because that's really important to everyone involved in the project. But beyond that, and as I often say in the Q&A at the end of the tour, I've decided, this is quite a nice thing, I've decided to create a one-of-a-kind wallpaper with everyone's names recorded on it and hang that in the visitors room so that everyone will be able to see the sheer numbers of people who have helped, the contributors, our Lairds and Ladies, but you'll also be able to find your name on that wall. Everybody's name there. I mean, in a tiny font, but there will be that, right, go to the visitors room and find out where your name is on the list. I think that'll be a lot of fun, but it speaks to the community being a thoroughly integrated part of this project. This is something that should stand for generations rather than just this generation. It should stand for a family that is not just the family that bought the castle and live here at the moment, but it should be for a wider family of interest, for a community which understands the importance of Scottish history, of built heritage, of preserving that which should be preserved. That goes back to the whole listed building thing, but I'm not going to go there again. So I hope that's been interesting. I think it's always good for me to talk about why we do things, because it both helps clarify that and also gives me a shot of enthusiasm, if you like, because by speaking about it and to the subject, I'm able to just reinvigorate the ideas. So I'm thankful for that. And thank you for listening to the podcast. I'm now going to get on with some more admonitions. You'll see those tomorrow probably. And I'm hoping that our next discussion pod will actually be a discussion, because I want to talk to Sadie about her first few years here and what she did to overcome some of the disadvantages of living in an isolated place in Scotland with two very young children. It's quite a story, and I hope you'll enjoy it.